Homeless girl plays in the rain until a billionaire stops in his tracks. Rain pounded against the cracked sidewalks of the city, pooling around a broken piano someone had left to rot. Beneath the grey sky, a girl barely old enough to be called a woman pressed her fingers to the keys. Each note trembled with hunger and hope. People hurried past, umbrellas like shields, not daring to meet her eyes. But one man, hidden behind the tinted glass of a black car, did not move on. He stopped. He listened, and for the first time in years, he felt something. Her name was Lily. She had nothing. No home, no family, not even dry clothes, but she had music. Music that had once filled her mother's kitchen with laughter and sunlight, music that now echoed under the cold belly of a city bridge where she slept, alone. She played that same song every day in the rain, hoping someone would remember her, hoping someone would care. And on that grey afternoon, as the billionaire's car rolled to a silent stop in the downpour, someone finally did. But Lily didn't know that the man watching her had once buried a daughter who loved that very song. Lily's fingers were blue with cold, her knuckles raw where the rain had cracked her skin. The piano's keys stuck in places, some missing entirely, but she knew the broken instrument like a friend. She hummed softly as she played, an old lullaby her mother used to sing before everything went wrong, before the fire, before the courtrooms, before her world burned down. Her life had folded in on itself after the accident, when her mother died and her father disappeared. The foster homes never lasted. She had stopped unpacking her few belongings, one torn notebook, a photograph, and a music sheet smudged with water stains, because she knew she wouldn't stay long anywhere. By 16, she was on the streets. Every day she dragged the abandoned piano, left behind outside a shuttered music shop, beneath the overpass. The rain protected her there somehow. It drowned the city noise, hid her tears, and made the world softer while she played. The few coins people tossed her way were enough to keep her alive. Barely. That day, though, something was different. A sleek black car slowed on the far side of the street. Its window lowered just a fraction, enough for her to glimpse the reflection of her own dripping face. Inside sat a man in his 60s, his suit too perfect for the broken street. He didn't speak, didn't move. He just listened. Lily hesitated, her fingers faltering. The melody wavered. The man's eyes closed. He exhaled just once, like the sound had struck something buried inside him. Then he tapped the driver's shoulder, and the car glided away, leaving her alone again with the rain. Lily stared after it until the taillights disappeared. Then she pressed her palms back to the keys, because what else could she do? She didn't know it yet, but that song had just cracked open the door to a world she had never imagined, and the man who had heard it would not be able to forget. The rain eased to a whisper that night, as Lily curled beneath her bridge with her blanket of cardboard and damp clothes. She stared at the water-stained photo of her mother, tracing the faded smile with her thumb. She tried not to think about the man in the car. Rich people didn't notice girls like her. Not for long, but miles away, in a mansion built of glass and silence, the man could not sleep. His name was Richard Cole, a billionaire who owned half the buildings in the city, but lived as if each room were a tomb. Since his daughter Emily's death 3 years ago, he had not played music, spoken of her, or walked into her old bedroom. He buried his grief under boardroom deals and endless flights, trying to convince himself that feeling nothing was safer than feeling everything. But that melody, that haunting, fragile melody the girl had played in the rain, it was Emily's favorite. Richard had not heard it since the funeral, and yet there it was, echoing from a broken piano on a forgotten street, played by a girl who looked like she hadn't eaten in days. It wrapped around his chest like an old ghost refusing to let go. He poured himself a drink and sat in the dark, staring at the city lights. He thought of how Emily's fingers used to dance over the same song while she laughed, how she'd begged him to come watch her school recital the night she died in that car crash. He hadn't gone. He'd been in Tokyo closing a deal worth billions. The memory burned. By morning, Richard had made a decision he didn't fully understand. He cancelled his meetings. He instructed his driver to take the long route back to the old overpass. But when they arrived, the piano was empty. Only a soggy cardboard sign sat on the bench. "Please don't throw it away, it still sings." Richard stood there in the drizzle, his polished shoes sinking into the mud. He felt foolish, ridiculous even, for chasing a sound. But he couldn't walk away. Not yet. Meanwhile, Lily had walked 5 miles to the soup kitchen, clutching her smudged music sheet in her coat pocket like it was gold. Her stomach ached, but so did her pride. She hated the way the volunteers looked at her, like she was already lost. She promised herself she would go back to the piano by nightfall. She always went back, and as she trudged through puddles with her head bowed, she didn't see the black car trailing 2 blocks behind her, or the man inside who could not let her vanish again, because something in her music had reopened the part of him that still wanted to save someone. But Lily had learned long ago, when people notice you, it's usually the moment before they hurt you. She had no idea this time would be different, and she had no idea the storm inside Richard was just beginning. By late afternoon, the clouds stacked like bruises over the city again. Lily stood in the soup kitchen line with a plastic tray, staring at a sign that read, "No seconds." Around her, the air hummed with the quiet calculation of survival. Who might share? Who might steal? Who might be kind today and cruel tomorrow? She tucked the smudged sheet music deeper into her pocket, a reflex as old as her hunger. 2 volunteers whispered about the storm. Another glance slid over Lily's thin coat, her frayed shoes, the damp hair stuck to her cheek. She kept her chin high. She'd learned that dignity wasn't a thing people gave you. It was a thing you carried even when no one could see it. Outside, the black car idled at the curb. Richard sat forward, hands gripping his knees like a man bracing for impact. "Don't make it obvious," he told the driver, then laughed once at himself. A lifetime of executive orders, and here he was, afraid of startling a teenager. He spotted her through the steamed window, smaller than he remembered, softer somehow. A child who had been forced to grow up in public, in the rain. He felt the familiar ache, the one that sounded like his daughter's name when the house was quiet, and stepped out without an umbrella. The heads in line turned. That suit, that car. Men like him didn't come here. The volunteer at the door stiffened, ready to say they were closed to donations until Friday. But Richard didn't carry a check. He carried a question. He waited while Lily collected her tray and moved to the far wall to eat beside a humming radiator. He stood a few feet away, hands visible, voice low. "I heard you play," he said. "Yesterday." Lily froze, the plastic fork hovering. The room swelled with curiosity. Conversations thinned to a murmur. She didn't look at him at first. She looked at the door, at the clock, at the floor where salt had melted into chalky maps. "I don't take requests," she muttered, returning to her food. "I don't have one," he said. "Just a thank you." She risked a glance. The man's eyes were a washed-out blue, like winter had moved in and refused to leave. He wasn't leering. He wasn't smiling. If anything, he seemed a little lost. "It's a wreck of a piano," Lily said, aiming for sarcasm and landing closer to apology. "It still sings." "It does," he said. "You made it sing." Something shifted, the smallest tremor in a locked room. She softened by a millimeter. "Why do you care?" "Because you played my daughter's song," he thought. "Because I failed her, and your hands gave me a minute to pretend I hadn't." Out loud, he said, "Because I heard something honest. I don't hear that much." She took another bite. Slow. Listening is free. Most people can't afford it. A laugh escaped him before he could help it. "May I sit?" She shrugged, which wasn't a yes but wasn't no. He sat, careful not to crowd her. He introduced himself as Richard. He didn't say Cole. He didn't say Billionaire. He didn't say, "Forgive me for existing when Emily does not." He just said, "Richard." "Lily," she answered. "Do you go to school, Lily?" She snorted. "Do you?" He deserved that. "Touché," he said softly. "Would it be all right if I walked you back to the piano later? I'd like to hear the song in the rain again." "I don't walk with strangers." "Then let me be a distant stranger. I'll follow across the street, no closer than a cab." She chewed, weighing danger against instinct. She was good at risk, had to be. Men who smiled could steal, and men who scowled could save you. And sometimes it was the other way around. She finished the last forkful, stood, and tossed the tray. "You can follow," she said. Across the street, outside, the rain began, a slow percussion warming to cymbals. Lily pulled up her hood and set off, Richard a half block behind. The driver shadowed them at a crawl, hazard lights blinking like a heartbeat. When they reached the overpass, Lily's steps quickened, then stopped. The bench was empty. The soggy sign remained, flapping sadly on the splintered wood. But the piano, their battered, rain-baptized piano, was gone. For a second, Lily looked like a girl again. Not a survivor, no, she whispered, as if the word could pull a 400-pound instrument from air. She spun toward the chain-link fence where a city notice had been zip-tied, bold black letters bleeding in the wet. Municipal cleanup, unsafe property removal, date stamped, authorized, final. She slammed her palm against the fence. They took it. Richard reached the paper, rain striping the ink. He recognized the contractor name. He had likely hired them, indirectly, to sanitize the blocks around his new development. Lily's breath hitched. It was all I had. He opened his mouth to say, "We'll get it back," and realized two things at once. The city didn't store junk pianos. They crushed them. And even if this one sat intact in a warehouse, time was a furnace. Every minute, another key might die. "I'm sorry," he said. Useless words in a useful mouth. Lily stared through the fence at the rectangle of absence, her throat working. "You don't forget a voice like that," she whispered, more to the rain than to him. "Even if it's broken." A truck rumbled under the bridge. A municipal logo flashed past. Lily lurched toward the street. "Lily, wait!" She darted into the downpour, chasing the sound of hydraulic brakes, a wild hope flaring like a match in wind. Richard followed, the driver scrambling from the car, shouting for an umbrella no one needed anymore. Around the corner, the cleanup crew was loading debris into a flatbed. Plywood, a grocery cart, and on the far end, its legs strapped, its belly exposed, lay a waterlogged body of wood and wire. The piano. Lily bolted. A worker yelled. Another swung around from the cab, hand raised to block her path. Richard lifted his wallet, his voice, his authority, all the things that made rooms go quiet, and none of it moved fast enough, because the crane's arm was already rising. And Lily didn't know that the worst was still to come. The crane's cables tightened with a metallic shriek, lifting the piano off the flatbed like it was just another carcass to be cleared. Rainwater streamed from its frame in sheets, splashing across the cracked asphalt. Lily sprinted toward it, her hood flying back, hair plastered to her face. "Stop! That's mine!" she screamed, but her voice vanished under the hiss of the storm. A worker in a yellow vest caught her arm mid-stride. "Hey kid, you can't be here. Please!" she thrashed, desperate. "You don't understand, it still sings!" Richard arrived seconds later, breathless, his expensive shoes skidding on oil-slick pavement. He held up both hands, palms out. "Let her go. Please. Let her speak." The worker blinked at him, then at the black car idling behind, the suited driver clutching an umbrella that had given up. "Sir, this thing's condemned. Unsafe property. City order." "I'll buy it," Richard said. "It's scrap, sir." "Then I'll buy the scrap." The worker's laugh was short and incredulous. "Paperwork's done. It's headed to the landfill. Even if you pay, it's gone." Lily yanked free of the worker's grip. "No," she whispered, as if sheer refusal could glue the world back together. "It's not gone, it's not." Richard stepped toward the crane operator, who had paused mid-lift to watch the scene. "How much?" he asked quietly. "Right now. Cash." The man hesitated. "Sir, how much?" Richard repeated, voice lower now, quieter, the tone that had once closed 9-figure deals in boardrooms where even air had to ask permission to move. The operator swallowed. 10 grand. Richard didn't blink. He pulled his leather wallet from his coat with the same ease most men pulled a breath. Bills, neat and real, passed from his hand to the workers. The man stared, eyes wide, then gave a curt nod to the crane. The machine froze, then slowly, mercifully, lowered the piano back to the ground. Lily fell to her knees beside it. Water dripped from its warped lid. One of the legs was cracked, the pedals dangling like broken bones. But the keys, most of the keys were still there. She pressed one. A thin, hollow note rose, ghost-like, fragile, alive. Her eyes blurred. "You saved it." Richard crouched beside her, rain pooling on his shoulders. "No," he said softly. "You did." She turned to him, suspicion warring with wonder. "Why would you spend that on me?" He almost told her about Emily then, about the recital he missed, about the lullaby she used to play barefoot on summer mornings, about the empty room he passed every night like a wound. But he didn't. Instead, he said, "Because beauty doesn't belong in a landfill." They moved the piano to the overpass together, with the workers grumbling but helping anyway, something in the scene softening even their calloused routines. The driver fetched blankets from the car to drape over it, shielding the keys from the worst of the rain. Lily wiped each ivory strip clean with trembling fingers. When the workers left, the street fell quiet again, just the steady heartbeat of rain and the glimmer of passing headlights. Lily sat on the bench and set her hands on the keys. Richard stood a few steps back, not wanting to disturb whatever magic had chosen to survive this long. She played. The first notes cracked, faint and off-pitch. Then, like a rusted lock finally yielding, the song began to bloom. Soft at first, then swelling, filling the underpass with something too alive to be forgotten. Richard closed his eyes. It was the same melody Emily used to play. Every rise, every pause, every delicate dip. For one trembling instant, he could almost believe his daughter had found her way back through this girl's fingers. A sob clawed up his throat, but he swallowed it. Not here, not yet. When the last note faded, Lily exhaled like she'd been underwater. Rain hissed applause from the concrete. Richard stepped forward. "You need somewhere dry to sleep," he said gently. Lily's shoulders tensed. "I'm fine here. You're not. I've made it this long." "Surviving," he said, "is not the same as living." She looked at him then, truly looked, and saw not just the wealth in his suit, but the sorrow stitched into the seams. "And what do you know about living?" she asked quietly. His jaw worked. "Nothing," he said, "but I know what it's like to stop." They stood in silence, rain braiding the distance between them. Finally, Lily packed her music sheet back into her coat and turned away, retreating into the darkness under the bridge. Richard didn't follow this time. He simply watched, the ghost of Emily's song still echoing in his chest, and knew he couldn't let this girl vanish again. Because now it wasn't just about saving her music. It was about saving what was left of himself. The next morning, grey sunlight bled through the gaps in the overpass. Lily woke, curled around her coat, the damp chill biting her bones. The piano loomed beside her like a loyal beast, scarred, waterlogged, but still standing. She ran her fingers over its warped wood, murmuring, "We made it," as if the instrument could hear her. Her stomach growled, a sharp reminder that music didn't buy breakfast. She tucked her hair beneath her hood and set out for the corner bakery dumpster, praying yesterday's bread hadn't yet molded. Across the street, hidden behind tinted glass, Richard's black car sat idle. He hadn't slept. After leaving her the night before, he'd driven aimlessly until dawn, circling the city like a ghost in his own empire. Every streetlight had whispered Emily's name. Every billboard, every shadowed alley had asked the question he could never answer. Why her and not you? By the time the sun rose, he knew one thing. He couldn't just leave Lily there. Not on that cold slab of concrete. Not with fingers that could coax angels from broken keys. "She'll run if you push her," the driver warned gently as Richard stared out the window. "Street kids don't trust lifelines. They've been cut too many times." "I won't push," Richard said. "I'll place something near her. Something she can pick up if she wants." The driver glanced in the rearview mirror. Like what? Richard didn't answer yet. He was still deciding what help looked like when it didn't come wrapped in strings or shame. Lily returned to find a thermos of coffee and a brown paper bag sitting on the piano's bench. She froze. Her name was written on the bag in careful block letters. Lily. Inside was a warm ham sandwich, still soft from the deli, and an apple so red it looked unreal. Steam coiled from the thermos when she opened it, rich and bitter. Real coffee. Not the scorched stuff they handed out at shelters. Her hands trembled. She scanned the street. Empty. Only the quiet drip of last night's rain from the bridge beams. She ate fast, like someone might snatch it away if she savored too long. Then she slid the apple core and the crumpled bag into her coat pocket, because nothing good should be left behind. And then she played. This time the music was brighter, still cracked around the edges but lifting. People slowed as they passed, their shoulders easing. A courier set down his bike and listened for a full minute. A mother pushing a stroller smiled without meaning to. Coins clinked into her tip jar like rain on tin. Half a block away, Richard watched from inside a small cafe, his untouched espresso cooling. He saw strangers pause, their guarded city faces softening as the melody threaded through the air. He remembered how Emily used to draw crowds at the park without trying, how her joy had been loud enough to silence everything else. For a brief, impossible moment, he let himself imagine Lily on a real stage, a polished grand piano under golden lights, the world hushed and waiting for her hands. She could do it. He knew she could, but she wouldn't get there from a sidewalk. "She needs someone to believe in her," he murmured. "She needs someone to ask her," the driver said. Richard nodded slowly. "Then I'll ask." At sunset, Lily closed the piano lid and gathered her few coins. Her hands ached. She was about to slip into the shadows when the black car glided to the curb. Her spine stiffened. Richard stepped out, coat buttoned, hair damp from the drizzle. He didn't carry food this time, no charity. Just a small white envelope in his hand. "I want to show you something," he said softly. "No tricks, no one else, just a place. I don't go places with strangers." "Then let me earn not being one." Lily crossed her arms. "If I say no, then I sit on the curb until you get sick of looking at me." A reluctant laugh flickered through her. "You'd ruin that suit." "I've ruined better things." That answer disarmed her more than any bribe. After a long silence, she nodded once. "Fine, but I sit by the door. And if you lie, I'm gone." "Deal," he said. As she climbed into the back seat, the warmth stunned her like a physical blow. The leather was buttery soft, the air faintly smelling of cedar and rain. She sank into it stiffly, ready to spring. The car pulled away from the only place she had ever belonged, and Lily didn't notice the way her hands trembled in her lap. Because part of her still believed this was all a trick, and part of her was afraid it wasn't. The city outside blurred into streaks of gold and grey as the car glided through the evening traffic. Lily sat rigid, her backpack clutched to her chest, eyes darting between the passing streetlights and the door handle, measuring the distance, the angles, the odds. Old habits, survival math. Richard didn't speak at first. He let the quiet hum. Let her decide if silence was safety or danger. Only when the skyline softened into low brick buildings and old oak trees did he glance back. "Do you like music schools?" he asked gently. Lily frowned. "What does that even mean?" "Places where people study music, learn it, live it." "I don't study," she said flatly. "I just play. Studying doesn't make it real," Richard said. "It just gives you more ways to say what's already inside you." She stared at him. "That's corny, completely," he admitted, and something almost like a smile flickered across her face before she looked away again. They turned down a narrow street lined with lanterns. The buildings were old and quiet, the kind that still held secrets in their bricks. The car stopped before a tall stone structure with arched windows glowing amber from within. Above the door, carved letters read, "Cole Conservatory of Music." Lily blinked. "Cole," she murmured. "Like your name." Richard's voice softened. It was hers first. The driver opened the door for her, but Lily didn't move. Her gaze lingered on the building's stained glass panels, on the faint sound of a violin drifting through the cracks of its doors. Warmth poured out when Richard pushed one open, carrying the smell of polished wood and old sheet music. "This was my daughter's dream," he said as they stepped inside. She wanted a place for anyone who loved music to come, no matter what they had or didn't have. Lily's eyes swept the grand foyer, velvet benches, gold-framed portraits of composers, the hush of something sacred. She stood very still, as if afraid she might shatter it just by breathing. "I don't belong here," she whispered. "You belong anywhere your music fits," Richard replied. She shot him a wary look. "And what do you get out of this? What's the catch?" "No catch," he said. "Just redemption, maybe." The word landed between them like a chord struck too hard. He led her down a hall lined with practice rooms. From behind the doors came fragments of sound, scales, arpeggios, tiny, imperfect beginnings. Lily's hands itched. She tried to hide it by shoving them into her coat pockets. They stopped at a small studio with a grand piano gleaming under a soft light. Black as midnight, perfect as a secret. Lily froze at the threshold. Richard nodded toward the bench. "Play." Her heart thudded. "I can't." "You can." "I don't know how to play something that clean." "Then play something that's yours." She stepped forward like someone approaching a wild animal. The piano's surface reflected her hollow-cheeked face, the street still in her eyes. She sat. The bench sighed beneath her weight. Her fingers hovered over the keys. They gleamed like untouched snow. She began with a single note, then another. Slowly, the melody rose. The same one from the broken street piano, but fuller now, swelling like a wounded thing finally allowed to breathe. The room filled with it. The world shrank to 10 fingers, 88 keys, and the soft ache of possibility. Richard stood by the door, hands clasped behind his back. His eyes burned. When she stopped, the silence seemed impossibly loud. Lily exhaled. "It sounds different. It sounds like you," Richard said. She swallowed. "And if I come back here, what then?" "Then you'll have a key to this room, a tutor, a scholarship. No contracts, no debt. Just a chance." Her shoulders stiffened. "Why me?" "Because you remind me of someone I loved," he said, voice low. "And because if I walk away now, I think I'll lose her forever." Lily stared at him, suspicion flickering, then fading, just slightly. She traced a finger along the piano's smooth edge. "I don't trust you," she whispered. "Good," Richard said softly. "Start there, and let the music do the rest." She didn't answer. But when they left the conservatory, Lily kept glancing back at the window where the piano still waited, glowing like something out of a dream she wasn't ready to believe in. And for the first time in years, she didn't return to the bridge. She returned to the possibility of tomorrow. The next morning, Lily woke on a borrowed cot in a corner of the conservatory's staff lounge, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of lavender and wood polish. For a long moment she lay still, watching sunlight ripple across the ceiling, unsure if she was awake or just trapped in one of the soft, cruel dreams that sometimes visited her on cold nights. Then the sound of a distant piano floated down the hall. Real, rich, alive, and the disbelief cracked. She sat up fast, her heart knocking against her ribs. Her old world, the bridge, the soup kitchen, the streets, felt like it was already fading behind her, as if it belonged to someone else, someone she used to be, someone still shivering under the overpass. She wasn't ready to let go of that girl, not yet. But for the first time in years, she wanted to try. Richard arrived an hour later with 2 coffees and a paper bag that smelled like cinnamon. He looked more human in daylight, less like marble, more like someone who'd stayed up all night trying to outthink his own ghosts. "You stayed," he said, surprised, though he tried to hide it. Lily arched an eyebrow. "Was I supposed to run? It crossed my mind." She took the bag. "Then maybe stop thinking like a rich guy for 5 minutes." He laughed, the sound rusty from disuse. "I'll work on that." They sat together on the lounge sofa, sipping coffee while morning sunlight slanted through the tall windows. It felt strangely normal, like something people did who weren't broken. When they finished, Richard led her back to the small practice room. The grand piano gleamed like liquid night. A music tutor waited inside, a gentle-eyed woman named Clara, whose smile had the patience of someone who had seen every kind of beginning. "Clara will help you," Richard said. "Only if you want her to." Lily narrowed her eyes. "And if I don't?" "Then she'll still be here tomorrow," Clara said simply. "No one's keeping score." That disarmed Lily more than anything else could have. No expectations, no conditions, just waiting. She sat at the bench again, stiff-backed, suspicious. Clara took the other seat and spread out blank sheet music. "Play something," Clara said softly. "Whatever feels like yours." Lily hesitated, then let her hands fall. The melody spilled out, raw and cracked and beautiful. Clara closed her eyes, nodding gently with the rhythm. When Lily stopped, breathless, Clara opened them again. "You play like you're trying not to disappear," she said. Lily's throat tightened. "Sometimes I am." "Then let's make sure you don't." Days blurred. Practice became ritual. Lily's fingers grew steadier, her posture straighter. She learned scales, chords, theory, strange new words that felt like keys to secret rooms inside the music. She still slept in the lounge at night, curled under her blanket like a question mark. But each morning she rose earlier, hungry to play. And every evening, without fail, Richard returned. He never interrupted her lessons. He sat in the back row of the empty recital hall with a book he never read, pretending he was there on business, while his gaze stayed fixed on her. Sometimes she caught him watching. He always smiled, small and cautious, like a man afraid to scare away a wild bird. Clara noticed. One night after Lily had gone, she turned to him in the quiet. "You're not just saving her," she said softly. "You're trying to save yourself." Richard stared at the stage, where the faint impression of Lily's shoes still marked the dust. He didn't deny it. One evening, as twilight soaked the city in violet and gold, Lily lingered by the conservatory doors, clutching her sheet music. She turned to Richard, who was waiting by the car. "Do you think—" she began, then faltered. "Do I think what?" he prompted gently. "Do you think someone like me can actually make it?" Richard's gaze softened. "I don't think it," he said. "I know it. Because you already survived what would have destroyed most people. Everything from here is just music." Her lips trembled around the almost smile that rose. "Music's easier than people." "Then let the music bring the people," he said quietly. "The right ones will stay." Lily looked back through the glass at the gleaming piano, the stage lights glowing faint as stars. Her chest ached with something she hadn't felt in years. Hope, fragile and terrifying. She didn't know yet that the world would soon test that hope in the cruelest way, because just as she was learning to rise, someone from her old life was about to drag her back down. The first sign of trouble came 2 days later, just as Lily was finishing a run-through of the piece Clara had assigned her. Her hands were steadier now, the notes blooming with confidence that startled even her. She lifted her fingers from the keys with a tiny smile, only to see Clara's expression flicker toward the door. A man was leaning in the doorway, tall, unshaven, his coat torn at the shoulder. Lily's smile died. Her hands curled into fists in her lap. "Lily," the man drawled. "Thought that was you." Clara straightened. "Sir, this is a private—" "I'm her brother," he cut in, flashing a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Well, my half-brother, I guess." Lily's mouth had gone dry. "Derek," she whispered. He stepped into the room, tracking mud onto the polished floor. The smell of cigarettes clung to him like a warning. "Heard you were playing for rich people now." I'm just learning," she stammered. "Learning," he repeated, mock pleasant. "Funny. Last I saw you, you were digging out of dumpsters." Clara rose. "If you're here to see Lily, perhaps it's better you wait outside." "I'm not here to see you," Derek snapped, his gaze sliding back to Lily. "I'm here because I heard someone's been dropping cash and food around you. Thought maybe my little sister finally hit a jackpot." "I didn't," Lily said quickly. "It's not like that." "Oh, it's exactly like that," he sneered. "Rich old guy feels sorry for a street rat and you get soft. Start thinking this world gives second chances." Her chest tightened. "Leave." "Not until you give me my cut." Clara stiffened. "Your what?" "My cut," Derek said, spreading his arms like it was obvious. "We've been surviving out there for years, me and her. I kept her alive. She owes me." "I don't owe you anything," Lily said, louder this time. Her voice cracked like ice. Derek's grin sharpened. "That's not how I remember it." The air went brittle. Clara subtly moved closer to Lily, her posture protective now. "You need to leave," she said firmly, "or I'm calling security." Derek chuckled, low and ugly. "Go ahead. Just know when I'm gone. So is the piano." Lily's stomach dropped. "What do you mean? You think this place will keep you when they find out who you really are? Where you came from?" He leaned closer, his voice a hiss. "I know things about you, Lily, things you wouldn't want them to know." Her body froze. He meant the group homes, the fire, the nights she didn't talk about. "I'll tell them you stole," he murmured. "Tell them you lied about your age. They'll toss you out before you can blink." Clara's eyes flashed. "That's enough." "Yeah, maybe." Derek straightened, smirking. "Or maybe I come back tomorrow. You think about what it's worth to keep your secret safe." Then he was gone, the door slamming like a gunshot behind him. Lily sat rigid on the bench, her pulse pounding. Clara knelt in front of her. "Hey, look at me. He can't hurt you here." "You don't understand," Lily whispered. "He always finds a way." "Then let us help." But Lily was already shaking her head. "No. If Richard finds out, he'll think I'm trouble. He'll send me back." Clara's voice softened. "He won't." "You don't know that," Lily said, and bolted from the room before Clara could stop her. That night, Lily didn't return to the staff lounge. She didn't sleep under the warm blanket or play the grand piano that felt like magic under her hands. She walked the city instead, her hood pulled low, her thoughts spiraling like leaves in a gutter. Every corner seemed to hold Derek's voice. Every shadow hissed, "You don't belong here." She wound up under the overpass again, staring at the skeleton of her old street piano. It sat in the dark, silent and cracked, a hollow carcass of everything she had been. She curled up beside it, arms around her knees, as the drizzle began again. And far across the city, in the penthouse where every surface gleamed like it had never known grief, Richard stared out at the rain and wondered why the world suddenly felt empty again. He didn't know Lily was gone. He didn't know the past had come for her. And he didn't know that if he didn't find her soon and she might never come back. By dawn, the city was silver and hollow. Lily sat on the cold concrete under the bridge, her breath curling like smoke in the damp air. The old piano hunched beside her like a corpse, its keys yellowed and warped, silent as stone. She pressed one finger to a cracked ivory strip anyway. No sound came. Not even a ghost of what once lived there. She pulled her knees tighter to her chest. Maybe Derek's right, she thought. Maybe people like me don't get out. Maybe I was stupid to believe. A bus roared past overhead, shaking the beams. Water dripped from rusted bolts like slow tears. Lily closed her eyes and pictured the conservatory, the warm lights, Clara's patient smile, Richard's careful silence. It felt like another planet, another life. She wasn't sure she had the strength to go back, or the strength to stay gone. Richard arrived at the conservatory early, carrying 2 lattes and a sheaf of paperwork he hadn't read. The moment he stepped into the lounge and found her cot empty, a thin thread of worry pulled tight through his chest. He checked the practice rooms. Empty. The recital hall, silent. The security guard at the front desk shook his head, didn't see her come in. Something inside Richard, The part of him that had waited too long to notice Emily was missing that night. Snapped awake, he called Clara. "Where is she?" Clara's voice trembled. "She left last night after someone came." "Who?" "Her brother, Derek. He was—" Clara paused. "Unstable, threatening, said things that scared her." Richard's grip on the phone tightened. "What things?" "That she didn't belong here. That he could ruin this for her." Silence hummed on the line, low and dangerous. Richard finally said, "I'll find her. Be gentle." Clara whispered, "She'll be expecting a fight." Richard's driver knew where to go. The bridge, the place where it had started. The car slowed to a crawl as the overpass came into view. There she was, a small, motionless shape curled against the wreck of her old piano. Her hair was soaked. Her coat clung to her frame like wet paper. Richard stepped out slowly, hands visible, no umbrella. Rain plastered his hair to his forehead as he approached. "Lily," he said softly. Her eyes fluttered open. They were glassy, red-rimmed, empty. "Why are you here?" "Because you weren't. I don't belong there," she whispered. "Derek's right. Derek is wrong. You don't know what I've done. I don't care what you've done." Her lip trembled. "If they find out, they'll throw me away." "No," Richard said, kneeling so he was eye level with her. His voice cracked like something breaking loose inside him. "They can't throw you away, Lily. You're not trash. You're music." Her breath hitched. "What if I mess it all up? Then you'll try again." His voice was rough. "That's all living is. Failing forward." Rain hissed around them like applause. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, slowly, like someone walking out of a dream, Lily reached for his offered hand. Her fingers were icy. He wrapped them gently in his own. "Come home," he said. She blinked. "Home? Yes," Richard said. "Wherever you are, and music is." They rode back in silence. The car warm and hushed, the city sliding by like a faded memory. Lily leaned against the door, eyes half closed, her damp hair haloed in the soft cabin light. Richard watched her reflection in the window, the fragile hope flickering there, and thought of Emily and of the night he hadn't been there to stop her from dying. Maybe he couldn't rewrite that ending, but maybe he could write a new one here. When they returned, Clara was waiting just inside the conservatory doors. She knelt and wrapped Lily in a fierce, wordless hug. Lily stiffened, then melted into it, her breath shaking. Richard turned away, giving them the privacy grief had stolen from both of them. He walked to the small practice room and opened the door. The grand piano waited, black and luminous, as if it had known she would come back. And she had, but none of them knew that Derek hadn't disappeared. He was watching from across the street, eyes cold, cigarette glowing like a fuse. And he wasn't finished. Night fell thick and heavy over the city, wrapping the conservatory in a hush that made its glowing windows look like beacons in the dark. Inside, Lily sat at the grand piano with Clara perched nearby, gently guiding her through a new piece. Her fingers stumbled at first, but steadied with each repetition, like someone relearning how to breathe. Richard watched from the hallway, leaning against the doorframe. His chest ached in a way that was almost beautiful, like pain that had been waiting years to become something else. But outside, across the street, Derek leaned against a lamppost, hood drawn low. Smoke curled from the cigarette between his fingers as he stared at the building. His eyes were hard and hollow. He wasn't just watching anymore, he was planning. Later, after Clara left for the night, Lily remained at the piano. The halls had emptied, the lights dimmed to a sleepy glow. She played quietly, more to herself than to anyone else. Each note seemed to stitch her back together, thread by trembling thread. Richard approached softly. "You've improved." She jumped, then laughed softly. "You scared me." "Didn't mean to." He sat in the chair beside her, hands folded. "You know, there's a scholarship recital next month. Students perform for the public, the city comes, sponsors, press." Lily blinked. "People watch?" "Yes, like a lot of people, yes," he admitted, smiling faintly. "But they'll be there to hear you." Her hands twisted in her lap. "I can't." "You can," he said. "You're ready." She shook her head. "What if I fail?" Richard's gaze softened. "Then they'll see something beautiful break, and sometimes that's even more powerful." Lily stared at the keys. Her voice was small. "Do you think Emily would have liked me?" Richard froze. He hadn't expected her to say her name. He stared at the floor for a long moment, throat tight. "She would have loved you," he whispered. "Because you remind me of her, except stronger." Lily's eyes shone. "I'm not strong." "You're here," Richard said. "That's strength." Hours later, after she'd finally gone to bed, Richard walked the silent halls alone. He ended up in the old storage wing where Emily's recital posters still hung, faded and curling. Her smile beamed out from the paper like sunlight caught in time. "I'm trying," he murmured to her face. "I swear I'm trying." Across the street, Derek flicked his cigarette into the gutter. He'd watched her leave the practice room, watched her laugh at something Richard said, watched her walk these halls like she belonged. It made his blood burn. He remembered cold nights under bridges when they'd huddled together for warmth, when she whispered about pianos while he kept rats away with a stick. He remembered her promising she'd never leave him behind. Now here she was, clean clothes, warm bed, someone else's protection. And not once had she come looking for him. Not once had she shared. In Derek's mind, it wasn't jealousy. It was justice. He pulled a crumpled flyer from his pocket, a notice about the scholarship recital. Big donors, press coverage, spotlight, perfect. If he couldn't drag her back down quietly, he would do it where everyone could see. And Lily, still asleep in the staff lounge with her music sheet clutched to her chest, had no idea that the person she once called family was about to shatter everything she had built. The days that followed blurred in a fragile kind of joy. Lily threw herself into practice with a hunger that startled Clara. She played until her fingers ached, until her wrists trembled, until the air around her shimmered with sound. The other students, most from careful homes, crisp uniforms, lives that had never known hunger, began stopping to listen. At first out of curiosity, then out of awe. There was something raw in her music, something untamed and honest, like every note had been clawed out of survival itself. Richard watched from the back of the room each night, silent, steady. He never clapped. He never interrupted. He simply let her see that someone was there, and that he wasn't leaving. But Derek hadn't left either. He lingered in the shadows outside the conservatory, drifting between bars and shelters, gathering fragments of Lily's story like weapons. He learned the recital would be televised locally. He learned where the press would set up, and he decided that if Lily wanted to step into the light, he would drag her darkness in after her. One evening, Clara handed Lily a clean recital dress wrapped in tissue paper, pale blue, soft as moonlight. Lily blinked. "This is for me? You can't wear ripped jeans on stage," Clara teased gently. "It's illegal." Lily laughed, an actual laugh, startled and bright. "I've never worn anything like this." "Then let it be the first of many." Lily smoothed the fabric over her lap, something fragile flickering in her eyes. "I don't want to mess this up." "You won't," Clara said, "because even if you break, you'll break beautifully." That night, Richard found Lily alone in the practice room. She was staring at the grand piano with her recital dress folded on the bench beside her, like she was afraid to touch either. "Cold feet?" he asked gently. She glanced up, startled. "I just keep waiting for something to go wrong." Richard came closer, his voice low. "Things go wrong. That's what life does. The trick is refusing to stay broken." She bit her lip. "What if Derek shows up?" "If he does," Richard said firmly, "I'll be there, and he won't get near you." Her eyes shimmered. "Promise?" "Promise." She hesitated. "You really think I can do this?" He smiled faintly. "Lily, you've already done the impossible. This is just the encore." Something in her posture loosened. She looked back at the piano, and for the first time she didn't look afraid of it. 2 nights before the recital, Derek slipped into the conservatory during visiting hours, wearing a stolen maintenance badge. He wandered the halls with casual arrogance until he found the recital stage. He stood at the edge of the spotlight, gazing at the empty chairs where the donors would sit. He pictured Lily standing there, trembling in her pale blue dress, the cameras flashing, and he pictured the chaos when he told the world who she really was, how she'd run from foster homes, how she'd stolen, how she'd lied about her age, how she'd left him bleeding in an alley once to save herself. Half-true stories twisted into daggers. He smiled. It would be perfect. She would fall, and he would finally stop feeling like the only one left behind. And while Lily drifted to sleep that night with her sheet music against her chest and dreams full of stage lights, Derek was sharpening the knife. The morning of the recital rose clear and sharp, the kind of golden autumn day that made even the city seem to hold its breath. The conservatory hummed with nervous energy, students clutching sheet music, staff bustling about with clipboards, cameras being set up near the back rows of the grand hall. Lily stood in front of the dressing room mirror, barely breathing. Her pale blue dress hung around her like mist, delicate and impossible. Her hair had been brushed smooth by Clara, who now crouched beside her, pinning the last stray strand in place. "You look like you belong here," Clara whispered. "I don't," Lily murmured. "You do," Clara said firmly. Even if you don't believe it yet. Richard appeared in the doorway. He didn't speak at first. He just stood there, stunned. She looked nothing like the girl he'd found curled under the bridge, and yet, somehow, she looked exactly like her. Like the soul of that drenched, shivering child had finally been polished enough to shine. "You're ready," he said softly. Lily's throat tightened. "I'm going to be sick." "That's how you know it matters," Richard said. As the sun set, the audience gathered. Velvet seats filled with donors in tailored suits, professors in dark robes, and students' families clutching bouquets. The local news crew stationed cameras at the back. The lights dimmed to a warm golden hush. Lily waited in the wings, fingers trembling around her sheet music. She thought of the bridge, of rain pooling around her feet, of Emily's melody echoing from a broken piano as strangers hurried past. She thought of how no one had stopped, until one man had. The stagehand whispered, "You're up." Lily's knees locked. Her heart thundered, but she stepped forward anyway, because sometimes courage is just walking when you want to run. The applause faded as she crossed the stage. The grand piano waited under the spotlight, black and gleaming. She sat, adjusted the bench. Her reflection stared back from the lacquered lid, a girl she barely recognized, a girl who might survive. The first note rang out. Across the hall, Richard sat in the front row, hands clasped tight. He barely breathed as the music rose, fragile at first, then surer, blooming with everything Lily had carried. The hunger, the grief, the stubborn ember of hope. The audience leaned forward, spellbound. For a moment it felt like Emily was there too, sitting cross-legged on the stage floor, grinning. Richard's eyes burned. Lily hit the crescendo clean and wild. The final note soared like a bird breaking free. Silence. Then the hall erupted. The applause hit her like a wave. Lily blinked, stunned, her heart hammering. She rose and bowed, dazed, as the lights flashed and the sound washed over her like sunlight. And then a voice cut through it, sharp and cold. "Ask her where she really came from." The applause faltered. Heads turned. Cameras swung. Derek stood in the aisle, hood down now, eyes glittering with malice. A cruel smile twisted his mouth. "She's no prodigy," he called. "She's a street rat, a liar, a thief. Ask her how many homes she ran from. Ask her who she left bleeding in an alley so she could save herself." Gasps rippled through the hall. Murmurs rose like smoke. Lily froze, mid-bow, her chest collapsing. The light suddenly felt scalding. Her old life was standing in the middle of her new one, tearing it open in front of everyone. Derek took another step. "She doesn't deserve your stage," he spat. "She deserves the gutter she crawled out of." Lily's vision blurred. Her hands shook so violently she nearly dropped her sheet music. The applause was gone now. Only the echo of his voice remained, dripping poison into every corner of her fragile new world. And Richard stood slowly, his jaw like stone, eyes locked on Derek. He had promised he wouldn't let him near her, and he was about to keep that promise. The air in the hall crackled, the tension sharp enough to cut. Derek stood in the center aisle like a bomb someone had forgotten to defuse, his words still ringing, venom curling through the silence he'd left behind. Lily couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The audience's whispers sliced into her like knives. Thief, liar, street rat. Every syllable peeling back the paper-thin armor she had built. And then Richard's voice came, low and steady, slicing through the chaos like a bell through fog. Enough. The word hung heavy. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Derek turned, sneering. "Oh, look, her savior." Richard rose from the front row. The spotlight caught the edges of his silver hair as he stepped into the aisle. "No," he said calmly. "Not her savior. Just someone who knows the truth." "The truth?" Derek barked a bitter laugh. "That she's a liar, a thief, that she crawled out of the gutter?" "That she survived," Richard said, voice cutting like glass. "That she clawed her way out of a fire, out of foster homes that failed her, out of nights you left her hungry and alone." Derek's grin faltered. Murmurs rippled through the crowd like shifting wind. Richard took another step. "You want to shame her for surviving? For being stronger than the world that broke her? Go ahead, but understand this," his voice sharpened. "You don't get to call her trash just because she escaped the place you chose to stay." Derek's eyes flickered. Rage and something smaller, hurt maybe, warred in his face. "She left me," he spat. "She had to," Richard said, "because you chained her to your drowning, and she chose to swim." The words landed like thunder. Derek's jaw clenched. His fists trembled at his sides. "She's nothing." "No," Richard said softly, fiercely. "She's everything." Silence swallowed the hall. Even the cameras stopped moving. Lily stood frozen behind the piano, her vision a blur of lights and faces. Her body felt paper-thin, like one wrong breath would rip her apart. She had never seen anyone stand between her and danger before, not like this. She had always been her own shield. Richard turned slightly toward her. His voice gentled. "Tell them who you are, Lily." Her throat worked. She swallowed hard. "I used to live on the streets." A ripple moved through the audience. "I played on a broken piano in the rain because it was the only thing that didn't leave me." Her voice shook, but she kept going. "I've been hungry, I've been lost, I've been invisible, but I'm still here." Her chest rose and fell. "And I'm not sorry for surviving." A hush fell so deep she could hear her own heartbeat. Then, somewhere near the back, someone began to clap. One pair of hands, then another, then another. Applause swelled like a wave. Louder this time. Fiercer. Real. Derek stood frozen in the aisle, the sound washing over him like a verdict he hadn't expected. His face twisted, torn between fury and shame. Then he spun and shoved through the side doors, disappearing into the night. The applause didn't stop. It roared, thunderous now, lifting Lily like a tide. Richard turned back to her, eyes bright. He mouthed, "You did it." Lily stared out at the sea of faces on their feet, clapping for her, not the girl from the bridge, not the ghost of who she used to be, but her. And for the first time in her life, she believed she deserved it. She bowed, not shaky this time, steady, whole, and somewhere in the roar she thought she could almost hear Emily clapping too. The ovation thundered through the hall long after Lily had left the stage. Backstage, Clara caught her in a fierce embrace, laughing through tears. "You were brilliant," she whispered. "Utterly brilliant." Lily's hands still trembled, her heart hammering against her ribs like it didn't quite believe she was alive. They clapped," she breathed. "They stood," Clara corrected. "They'll be talking about this for years." Richard appeared a moment later, stepping past the curtains with quiet gravity. He didn't speak. He simply laid his hands gently on Lily's shoulders and looked at her as if seeing sunlight for the first time in years. "You were extraordinary," he said softly. Her throat tightened. "I thought I was going to fall apart." "You did," he said with a small smile, "and you made it music." They slipped out a side door while the other students and donors mingled in the lobby. The night air outside was cool and clean, smelling faintly of rain and roses from the garden beds. The city beyond the gates hummed like a distant memory. Lily walked between them, clutching her sheet music to her chest. For the first time, the silence wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. "Where do we go now?" she asked quietly. "Anywhere," Richard said. "Everywhere." Clara smiled. "But first, dinner. Real dinner." Lily laughed, a soft, bewildered sound like her body wasn't used to it yet. "I've never had a real dinner." "Then tonight," Richard said, "you'll have two." They took her to a quiet bistro tucked down a cobbled side street, the kind of place where the air smelled like garlic and candle wax, and the waiters spoke in murmurs. Lily sat at a linen-covered table under strings of fairy lights, eyes wide as the waiter placed a plate of handmade pasta in front of her like it was treasure. She stared at it. "It's beautiful." "It's just food," Clara teased gently. "No," Lily said. "It's proof." "Proof of what?" Richard asked. "That the world isn't always trying to take things away," she whispered. Richard's gaze softened. "Sometimes it's trying to give them back." They ate slowly, talking about nothing and everything. The first songs they ever loved, the weirdest jobs they'd had, how rain sounds different in every city. For once, Lily didn't have to measure every word, didn't have to hide the sharp edges of who she'd been. They didn't cut her down for it. They held space for it. By the time dessert arrived, the knots in her chest had started to loosen. But somewhere far across the city, Derek sat in a cracked vinyl booth at a bar, nursing a glass of cheap whiskey and the taste of defeat. The television above the counter replayed a clip from the recital, Lily under the golden lights, radiant, bowing to a roaring crowd. The bartender whistled. "Kids got magic." Derek's jaw clenched. He drained the glass in one swallow. Magic. No one had ever called him that. No one ever would. And as the crowd on the screen surged to its feet, something cold settled into his bones. He wasn't done. Not yet. Lily woke the next morning wrapped in soft sheets, the city sunlight pouring like gold across the ceiling of her tiny dorm room at the conservatory. For a long, disoriented moment she lay still, listening to the faint hum of distant pianos, wondering if it had all been a dream. The applause, the lights, the way Richard had looked at her. Not like a broken thing, but like something becoming. Her chest ached in a strange, beautiful way. Then she noticed something on the floor by the door, An envelope slipped under the crack, her name scrawled across it in thick, jagged letters. Her stomach knotted. She knew that handwriting. She picked it up with trembling hands and opened it. Inside was a scrap of newspaper clipping from last night's recital. Her photo under the headline, "Homeless Girls' Music Stuns City." Across it, written in black marker, were the words, "You forgot who fed you. You forgot who bled for you. I'm coming, D." Her breath caught. The paper slipped from her fingers and fluttered to the floor like something dying. Derek hadn't gone. He hadn't even slowed down. Downstairs, Richard and Clara sat in his office, reviewing scholarship offers for Lily that had flooded in overnight. Prestigious programs, sponsorships, even invitations to tour. "She has the world at her feet," Clara said, smiling. Richard nodded, though his eyes were distant. "She just needs to believe she deserves it." Clara studied him. "So do you." Before he could reply, Lily appeared in the doorway, pale as paper, clutching the crumpled note. "He's here," she whispered. Richard was on his feet instantly. "What happened?" She held out the note with shaking fingers. He read it once, twice, his jaw tightening like steel. Clara's eyes widened. "We should call the police." "No," Lily said quickly, panicked. "No police. If they come, Derek will run. He always runs." Richard exhaled slowly, the old executive calm sliding into place like armor. "Then we make it so he has nowhere to run." So that afternoon, Richard had security installed around the conservatory, quietly, discreetly, without telling Lily the full extent. Plainclothes guards in the lobby, cameras at every entrance, the driver parked outside at all hours. But Derek was patient, and patient men are dangerous. He watched from across the street, hidden in the hollow of a construction scaffold, his eyes dark and burning. He saw the guards, saw the cameras, and smiled thinly. They thought they could lock him out. They didn't understand. He wasn't trying to break in, he was going to make her walk out. That night, Lily tried to play. She sat at the grand piano in the practice room, fingers hovering over the keys, but nothing came. The notes inside her felt tangled, strangled by fear. Every shadow in the hall looked like him. Every creak of the building sounded like footsteps. Clara watched from the door. "You don't have to be strong all the time," she said gently. "I do," Lily whispered. "Because if I stop, everything falls apart." "No," Clara said. "If you stop, we'll hold it." Lily blinked hard, swallowing the tears she didn't want. "I don't know how to let anyone do that." "Then start small," Clara said softly. "Let us worry for one night." Lily stared at the keys for a long moment, then let her hands fall to her lap. "Just one night?" Clara smiled faintly. "That's how forever starts." But as Lily finally crawled into bed hours later, the note still burned in her mind. And outside, across the street, Derek watched her window flicker dark, waiting, plotting, certain of one thing. If he couldn't take her world from her, he would make her burn it down herself. The following day dawned cold and brittle, the sky the color of tin. Lily moved through it like a shadow, silent, hollow-eyed. Her shoulders wound tight as wire. Every sound made her flinch. Every face seemed to watch her too closely. She kept her hands shoved in her pockets as she walked down the marble hallway toward her practice room. She wasn't playing today, not really, but she needed to be near the piano, like an anchor, something to keep her from drifting. Clara intercepted her at the door, holding a stack of new sheet music. "Thought we could try something light," she said gently. "Something playful." "I don't feel playful," Lily murmured. "That's why we try," Clara said, but Lily shook her head, pushing past her into the room. "Not today." Clara hesitated, then quietly set the music on the bench and left her alone. Lily sat staring at the keys, her reflection warped in the glossy black surface. She imagined Derek's voice echoing in the recital hall, imagined the headlines twisting overnight, conservatory duped by street thief, scholarship prodigy a fraud. One word from him, and everything she'd built could disintegrate. And the cruel part was, part of her believed he was right. Part of her still felt like she didn't belong here. Her hands trembled in her lap. She didn't see Richard standing in the doorway, watching silently. He had come to check on her, but something about her stillness rooted him to the threshold. Finally, he spoke. "Fear's loud, isn't it?" Lily flinched, then let out a shaky laugh. "It's screaming." Richard stepped closer. "I know that sound." She glanced up at him. "Do you ever stop hearing it?" "Not really," he said honestly. "But you can learn to play louder than it." Her eyes welled. "What if he ruins everything? Then we rebuild." Richard said simply. "Together." She swallowed hard. "You don't even know if I'm worth it." "I do," he said. Because I've already seen who you are when no one's watching. Something fragile cracked in her chest. She dropped her gaze. I'm so tired of running. Then stop, Richard said softly. Let me stand still with you. That night, Lily dreamed of fire. The old house, the flames licking through the walls, Derek dragging her out by the arm, smoke clawing her lungs, sirens screaming. She woke, gasping, tangled in her sheets, sweat cold on her skin. She pressed her palms to her eyes. He's not here, she whispered to herself. He's not here. But the fear didn't fade. It just curled tighter, waiting. Across the street, Derek waited too. He had spent the day forging a plan. The recital had made her untouchable for now, but he knew her better than anyone. Knew her cracks, her old shame, her hunger to belong, and he knew exactly where to press. He pulled out his phone and typed a message. Just 5 words. Then he hit send. In her room upstairs, Lily's phone buzzed on the nightstand. She picked it up and froze. You owe me one last song. Her heart lurched. Attached was an address, an abandoned warehouse on the edge of the city, and a photo of the broken street piano, still intact, waiting. Her breath caught. She didn't know how he'd found it, but she knew exactly what he wanted. He was pulling her back to where it all began, and Lily, hands trembling, had no idea that going there might cost her everything. The warehouse sat at the city's edge like a forgotten skeleton, windows shattered, roof sagging, graffiti blooming across its ribs. Night had drowned the streets around it, and the only light came from a single hanging bulb flickering near the loading dock. Lily stood in its shadow, hood pulled low, heart hammering so hard it shook her ribs. The address Derek had sent glowed on her phone screen like a curse. She should have told Richard. She should have told Clara. But some part of her still believed this was hers to fix, that the war Derek had declared on her could only end if she faced him alone. She climbed the cracked steps, every sound echoing like breaking glass. Inside, the warehouse smelled of rust and old rain, and there, beneath the dying bulb, sat the piano, her piano, the same broken thing she had played in the rain, the keys yellowed and warped, its body scarred but still whole. It looked like a ghost resurrected just to haunt her. Derek leaned against it, arms folded, a cigarette glowing between his fingers. His smile was slow and sharp. Took you long enough. Lily's voice cracked. Where did you get it? Borrowed it, he said. Pulled it out of the dump, patched it up. Thought maybe we could have a reunion. You could have just left me alone. He snorted. You think I watched you climb out just so you could pretend you never came from here? I'm not pretending, Lily said. I'm surviving. You're forgetting. His eyes gleamed. And I can't let you. She stepped closer, anger sparking through the fear. What do you want from me? Simple. He flicked ash to the floor. Play me the song one last time here where you started. Let the world see who you really are. No one's watching, she said. They will. He held up his phone. The screen glowed with a live stream app. Already live. Her stomach dropped. You're broadcasting this every second, he said. Your fancy friends will see. The city will see. Let's see how they clap for the gutter girl when she's back in the gutter. Lily's mouth went dry. If I don't, then I send them everything, he said, pulling a flash drive from his pocket. Your old files, the fire, the arrests, the nights you ran, all of it. Her heart thudded. That was years ago, and it'll still bury you. Silence rippled through the cavernous room, broken only by the soft hiss of the bulb. Lily stared at the piano, the first place she had ever been heard, the first place she had ever believed she mattered, and now Derek was trying to turn it into her cage. Please, she whispered, don't do this. You owe me, he said. Everything you have you got because I kept you alive. You kept me trapped, she said, voice trembling. I saved myself. Derek's eyes flashed. Then prove it. He stepped aside, gesturing to the bench. Play. Lily stood frozen, the old panic clawing up her spine. If she played, the world would see her as his, tainted, claimed. If she refused, he would burn everything she had built. She could almost feel the keys under her fingers, could almost hear the rain. She closed her eyes, and for one trembling moment, she wished Richard was here. Then, from somewhere deep inside, a quieter voice whispered, You are not who you were. You are who you choose to be. Lily opened her eyes and walked to the piano. The piano creaked under her weight as Lily sat, the warped bench groaning like it remembered every cold night she had once spent here. Dust curled up from the keys when she laid her trembling fingers across them. Derek stood a few feet away, phone raised, the red light of the live stream glowing like a watchful eye. His grin was sharp, expectant, triumphant. "Go on," he said. "Show them who you really are." Lily stared at the keys. Her heart thrashed like a trapped bird. For a flickering moment, she saw herself as he wanted her to be. Small, scared, broken on command. The girl from the bridge, from the foster files, from the shadows. But then she thought of the conservatory's golden lights, of Clara's patient hands guiding hers, of Richard's steady eyes in the front row, daring her to believe she belonged. She drew a slow breath and began to play. The first note was thin and cracked, but it didn't matter. Another followed, steadier, then another. The melody rose, weaving through the cavernous warehouse, soft and defiant, like light bleeding through boarded windows. Dust motes danced in the glow of the dying bulb. Derek's smirk faltered. This wasn't the song he remembered. It wasn't the old morning lullaby she had once played to keep herself from shattering. This was new. This was hers. Her hands moved faster, stronger, the rhythm lifting like wings. She poured every scar into it. Every hunger, every night she had sung to herself to stay alive. Every second she had stood on that stage, shaking, but unbroken. It was raw and fierce and uncontainable. It didn't ask for permission. It demanded to exist. Derek lowered the phone slightly, blinking as if the sound was breaking through armor he hadn't realized he wore. His mouth opened, but no words came. The song swelled. Lily's hair fell across her face, her body moving with the music as though she were burning away the last of her fear. And just like that, the war ended. Not with shouting, not with fists or shame, but with beauty Derek couldn't destroy. The last note rang out like a bell in the empty dark. Then silence. Lily sat very still, chest heaving. Derek's face was pale, stunned. The phone in his hand trembled. "You," he began, voice cracking. "You weren't supposed to—" "I know," Lily said quietly, rising from the bench. "I wasn't supposed to survive." She stepped toward him. Each footfall echoed. "But I did." Her voice sharpened, steady now. "And you don't get to own that." Derek flinched like she'd struck him. "You think they'll really keep you? That you can erase where you came from?" "I don't want to erase it," Lily said. "I want to prove it didn't win." Something fractured in Derek's expression, anger collapsing into something smaller, older. He looked suddenly very tired. "You left me," he whispered. "I had to," she said, "or I would have died there with you." For a long, aching moment, they just stared at each other. Two ghosts from the same fire, finally seeing what the flames had made of them. Then Derek's phone slipped from his hand, clattering to the concrete. The live stream cut out. He turned and walked into the shadows without another word. Lily stood alone in the vast, echoing space, her heartbeat slowly steadying. She looked back at the piano, the old broken thing that had carried her through the worst. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she walked out into the cold night, not looking back, because she knew, for the first time, she wasn't going back. And none of them knew she was already planning what she would play next. The night air hit her like a baptism. Sharp, cold, clean. Lily walked fast, almost running, her breath streaming in pale ribbons as the city lights rose ahead like a constellation she was finally allowed to touch. Her hands still trembled, not from fear now, but from release. She had gone back into the darkness and come out still whole. By the time she reached the conservatory gates, the eastern sky was already paling. The building loomed like a fortress of glass and gold, its windows catching the first shy shards of dawn. She paused at the door, half afraid it wouldn't open. Half afraid this place, this fragile new world, might have dissolved in her absence. But the lock clicked softly. Warm light spilled out. It was still here, and, she realized, so was she. Richard was waiting in the lobby, rumpled and sleepless, his tie loosened, a half-drunk cup of coffee cooling on the table beside him. He rose the instant she stepped inside. "Lily?" His voice cracked like something breaking loose. "Where were you?" She stood very still, soaked in moonlight and dust. "I had to finish something." He crossed the space between them in 3 long strides and stopped just short of touching her, his hands trembling at his sides. "Don't do that to me again." Her throat tightened. "I'm sorry." "No," he said softly, fiercely. "Don't be sorry. Just come back. Always come back." Something inside her gave way. She swayed forward and he caught her. She buried her face in his coat, and for the first time, she let someone hold her without flinching. Richard's arms wrapped around her like shelter. "It's over," he whispered. "You're safe now." And for the first time in her life, she believed it. Hours later, Lily sat at the grand piano in the empty recital hall, sunlight spilling across the stage in warm, golden stripes. Clara perched cross-legged on the front row seat, smiling drowsily, a mug of tea cradled in her hands. "You look different," Clara said. "I feel different," Lily admitted. Like I'm finally breathing." "Good," Clara said softly, "because you've got work to do." Lily grinned faintly. "What kind of work?" "The kind that changes the world," Clara said, lifting her mug. "One song at a time." So that evening, Richard walked through the city alone, hands in his pockets, the autumn wind tugging at his coat. He passed the old overpass, now fenced off for demolition, the hollow space where the broken piano had once stood. He stopped, staring at the empty concrete slab. It looked like a grave, but instead of sorrow, he felt something like peace. Because Lily wasn't there anymore. She had walked out of the ruins, and she had taken him with her. He tipped his face up to the cold stars, and for the first time in years they didn't look distant. They looked like possibilities. Lily played late into the night. Not the old song of survival, but something new, wild, luminous, unafraid. The sound spilled from the windows of the conservatory and danced across the dark city streets like a promise. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wasn't surviving anymore. She was becoming. And anyone who heard that music knew the girl who once played in the rain for coins was about to set the whole world on fire. The recital hall was empty except for Lily, seated at the grand piano beneath a single golden spotlight. The rest of the world slept, but her music rose anyway, soft and soaring like the sound of someone finally telling the truth. Each note shimmered through the cavernous room, echoing against velvet curtains and carved beams, filling every inch of space that used to feel too big for her. Now it fit, because she did. Her fingers danced across the keys, no longer trembling. The melody pulsed with life, alive in a way that asked for nothing and apologized for nothing. She wasn't playing to survive. She was playing because she had something to say, and the world was listening. Outside the glass doors, Richard stood beneath the autumn stars, hands in his pockets, eyes shining as the music curled into the night air. He thought of Emily, how her laughter used to tangle through his halls like sunlight. He thought of Lily, how she had walked out of the ruins and built something beautiful from the ashes. He had brought her a second chance, but she had reminded him what a first chance was worth. Clara joined him on the steps, mug of tea steaming in her hands. "She's going to change everything," she whispered. "She already has," Richard said. When the last note faded, Lily closed her eyes and let the silence settle over her like a crown. She rose from the bench, shoulders straight, heart steady, and walked off the stage. Not as a street girl, not as a survivor, not as someone running from what she was, but as who she had become, as who she had always been. A musician, a fighter, a girl who chose to stay. And as the hall fell still behind her, her words lingered in the air like the last echo of her song. "You don't need to come from light to become it." She smiled to herself, a quiet, fierce smile that belonged to no one else. And somewhere, across the sleeping city, the broken piano waited in the dark like an old ghost finally at peace, because the girl who once played in the rain wasn't lost anymore.